Hey guys, I'm WeProps, and today I'm going to show you how I made my Phase 1 212th Battalion clone helmet using my 3D printer, some Bondo, and then some acrylic paint. If you guys want the files that I made for this, I have the links to it in the description. I have a few different versions of the Phase 1 helmet, so just choose which one you want. For this video, I'm going to be using my Specialist helmet, which just has the micro binoculars added onto it. I printed this out in PLA. I did forget to size it for my head, so this accidentally came out just a little bit too small. You could probably fit one of my brothers, but I then went through and just hit the whole thing with some black spray paint just to help me see the high and low spots, and then just kept on filling up all the print lines with spray paint, just hitting it every few hours or so just so that the paint could dry and so it didn't drip as much. And then I covered it in a little bit of Bondo and then just hit it again before I sanded it. This is just to help fill in all the print lines, like I said earlier. And I use black spray paint just because it's it's like 99-cent spray paint. And then I hit it with some primer after sanding it a little bit. This is just to help me see what spots I still need to go through and sand. And then I went through and just wet sanded it with some 220 grit sandpaper, and then worked my way up to 500 grit sandpaper. That's the lowest grit that I have. You could work up higher, but I was going to texture this helmet a little bit, so I didn't need a perfectly smooth surface on it. I was just trying to get rid of most of the print lines. So some of you guys ask what my sanding strategy is, and that's just working my way up from 60 grit to 90 grit to 110 to 220, and then wet sanding it from 1000 to 2000. And then if I still need a really nice surface, then I'll get a microfiber cloth and wipe off the whole surface, and then get a little bit of paint thinner and go over it with a napkin, and this just gets rid of all of that dust and grime and maybe little particles of paint and stuff that have gotten over it. By paint thinner, I mean like oil-based paint thinner, not acetone, because that will definitely activate any paint that you're using. Oil-based doesn't, and it gets rid of like oil residue and stuff from your hands. So that's what I use. Hope that's helpful for you guys. I then went through and stippled on some white paint over the whole helmet, just using some cheap acrylic craft paint and an old sponge. I just went through and got a nice big glob of it on the sponge and then stippled that all over the whole thing. It was pretty easy since most of this was white. I just had to sand it a few areas, so a few areas did show through with some of the Bondo on the underside, and so I was just trying to cover up most of those areas. I really like the texture that this ended up giving it. It's a pretty interesting texture, nothing like I've seen before on any of the helmets that I've made, and I've made a few of the clone ones, so I really like it how it turned out, that texture anyways. It's not particularly accurate to any source material, but I think it's just an interesting thing that happened, and I'll try to control it in the future. I did think it was a little heavy in a few places, but I think it was an interesting result that I got of it. You guys are probably going to see it in a little bit, but I think it's pretty cool. create a little bit of a brush stroke texture and to highlight some areas, I went through and just used a sponge and wiped it on some of the high areas like the brim of the helmet and some of the ear parts. It didn't come through as much as I liked, but I was pretty happy with it. And then I went through and sprayed on the yellow for the 212th Battalion, and this is just some yellow markings on it. For the micro binoculars, I attached them using a half-inch or a quarter-inch wooden dowel that I just cut to fit and slid in there, and it held it pretty tightly. I did use a little super glue to thicken it up, but it turned out pretty good. I then went through and mixed up a little bit of a black wash. It's more of gray at this point since it's so diluted, but I wanted it pretty thin, and I just mixed up some black paint with some water, well, a lot of water. When doing this, you want to make sure to wear aquatic clothing because you will get very dirty. So I was switching to my jacket and apron for painting just so that I did not ruin any more of my clothes because like 90% of my stuff has paint covered. I also got some tissues to wipe away some of the paint from some of the high areas just to give it a nice little worn look. If you guys don't know what a black wash is, it's just watering down some black paint, brushing it on, letting it dry for a few moments or seconds or whatever how deep you want the color. And then you go through and wipe it away with a rag or napkins or something, towel, whatever, just to get it off the high areas and to leave it in the recessed areas to look like the buildup of grime and gunk and stuff over a surface. And depending on how concentrated your black wash is, it just gives it a nice little effect. If you water it down a lot, then it's a lot more subtle. If you leave it a little thicker, then it definitely shows a lot more of a heavy war on it. I like to do a couple different washes just to build up that grimy look over it. Instead of doing like one heavy, I feel a couple washes brings out a little more character. After I did a couple of washes, I went through and put in the visor. The visor is actually two pieces since this helmet has kind of a oddly shaped visor with like that mouth part, and so that part kind of splits it at two, and so I just glued that in with hot glue. And overall, I'm really happy with how this whole thing turned out. I really like the paint apps on this. I'm a big fan of the 212th, so it's great that I was able to paint up this helmet like that. I like the micro binoculars on it. Really did wish it fit my head, but I'm definitely going to be making a few more of these, so not too much of a big deal. You guys can probably see that texture I was talking about. It's a little bit rough or bumpy. I don't know. I like how it turned out. I'm not sure if it's good for clone helmets or not, or if it's would be like something, or could be used for a different project or something like a night helmet or whatever. But yeah, overall, I like how it turned out. Not accurate, but a lot of the stuff I make isn't, and I find it cool. If you guys don't mind supporting me through Patreon, they pay for all my black paint, so that's awesome. So every black wash you see me do, that's paid for by the Patreons, so thank you guys. Thank you guys for watching. If you guys don't mind liking and subscribing, that would be great. We just broke 500 subs a couple weeks ago, so that's super awesome. Hoping to break 750 by the end of, or beginning of this summer, so the end of the school year. And if we can do that, I'm totally going to do a larger build or project, so let me know what you guys want me to make and I'll get making it. Bye.